ممكن ننتقل للوضع في لبنان. ميكيلي أظن كنت هتدينا فكرة عن قطاع الطاقة بالأخص.
نعم، شكرا مهنور، ومساء الخير للكل. أنا بدي أعتذر منكم لأنه رح أحكي بالإنجليزي لأنه أسهل علي. So I will now switch to English. As per Lebanon, and yes, I will try to focus more on the energy sector, but let's just highlight that, of course, Lebanon's political economy has always been oriented towards a liberal approach. For instance, we can also remind that the preamble of the Lebanese constitution actually speaks about a liberal identity of the country, which is quite a unique, maybe, situation for constitutions, not only in the region, but maybe also elsewhere, which doesn't mean that this liberalism is an actual one, or in the neoclassical perspective. We should also emphasize the fact that this liberalism is also very much without laissez-faire, which means that it is very much liberalism that suffers from interferences, political interferences. This is a way, when we speak about liberalism without this kind of capitalism. However, we should also highlight that the liberal approach of the country was boosted in the post-Civil War period as privatization of the few state-owned enterprises was highly pushed by international donors and by the unholy trinity, to come back to what Weil was saying, in fact it was considered as a prerequisite to obtain loans and funds for post-war reconstruction. Now, this privatization of state-owned companies was not only a prerequisite to obtain loans and money, it was also presented as it is today as a recipe to develop more efficient and effective productive sectors. Now, what I would try to do today is to ask the question: has privatization worked in Lebanon? Has privatization worked somewhere else in the region and in the global south? Because the answer, if we look at very specific examples, is a clear no, for sure for Lebanon, and most probably for other regions, for other countries and for the region. And we now have the great opportunity, in fact, to look into these experiences of privatization, to understand if this has ever been the good recipe for the region. So I would just like to highlight that, as it has already been done, that privatization is not a new idea. Okay. Privatization is a very old-fashioned developmentalist mantra that links the liberalization of the economy to the idea that this will bring to a liberalization of politics, which is clearly not the case. So as of today, we have this very big opportunity to assess and gauge the gains and failures of privatization of state-owned companies, which is a very needed discussion, especially for Lebanon in this specific conjuncture where an IMF deal with the IMF is currently under discussion. So, of course, privatization is one of the main conditionalities of this kind of agreement, and that's why I would like really to focus a bit on what I think to be one of the main examples of the privatization fiasco in Lebanon. And which is also really illuminating vantage point to switch the attention from how was privatization introduced to how did privatization actually translate on the ground. This specific example is that of the Kaharaba Lebanon, of the Electricité du Liban, which constitute a de facto process that has lasted at least 20 years and that has started around the 90s, where under the pressure of the World Bank in particular and other international donors, the government of Rafiq Hariri firstly decided for the freeze of hirings in public sector in general, which we'll see how has a huge impact on the privatization process at the Electricité du Liban, and later on passed the so-called privatization law of the ADL in 2000 and then in 2002. This process was then boosted by the Paris 1 and Paris 2 conferences, and the so-called Basil's plan in 2011 actually externalized most of the ADL services, the distribution service in particular, to private companies. So now, to be very short and not take a lot of time, we will have the opportunity to go back to some details later on. But what I would like to highlight as of now is that the privatization process that was put in place in ADL 20 years ago did not lead to any virtuous circle bringing better efficiency and productivity for the sector. Before the current multilateral crisis that Lebanon is undergoing, of course, ADL was not capable of responding to the power needs of the country. And today we have to be glad when we got 4 hours electricity in the Beirut intramuros. But not only this process was not efficient and functional, if you want, this also had some counterintuitive effects, such as favoring some dynamics that it should actually counter. Privatization should actually counter, which is, for instance, precisely clientelist and political interference within the company. Of course, privatization also brought deteriorating workers' condition within the company with the introduction of labor figures like daily workers, women, and the contractor contract workers such as the Jubat al-Ikra, that bill collectors that were also on a contract-based labor. So, well, I will maybe go back to these details later on. Thank you.